Just turn this down to a minimum. And hello and welcome on in. You are watching the Burning Power Show, where you are therefore required to love yourself, to trust yourself, to want yourself, and to need yourself. And it's a blessing to be on this televised program with you today. Right now it is possibly around 2:30 a.m. in the morning. And I am honored to be with you, because this is a moment in time that has been given willingly and willfully by God in respect to all that he has already promised to us. And so with that knowledge, I therefore humbly commit myself to the experience of the healing power that God is bestowing unto us. I have a couple of topics that I want to talk about. Number one being the fact that I did receive the shipments of the books of my latest literary work, which is Soon I Wither, Weeping in the Grass of Old, which is the experience of God meeting me in the faces of the deep, thus being God meeting me at the drawing board of existence, which would act as the sacrificial offering of my entirety to God, and the submittal of the wound of Satan, which would be the propositioning of my truth before the throne of the Lord, the encounter of meeting God, the last show was the prerequisite to this show, and as I promised, I am doing the continuation of the Spiritual Confinement series. And today's show is going to be about the area of penetration. Number 3, which is the area of soul thirsting. So we will be talking about that, which is the premise of this show tonight, or this morning. First, let me get you a visual of the book. I'm going to show you the front of it, and then briefly show you the back. This book, along with any of my other books, are available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and ThriftBooks.com, and several other markets out there that the publisher have sent them to. But those are the main 3 that you can definitely purchase them from. I am in the process of working with or doing a collaborative affair with a nonprofit corporation in the pursuit of doing a reading and doing the press release and also a book signing. I am in the process of doing that. I don't want to hold your guys' time or the audience's time with all of that, because I definitely won't want to be operating in the area of vanity, because all of the work that I do is in pursuit of the submittal to God's work, and that is the mere purpose of everything that I do, which is my life's work. It is the very premise as to the reason why I even exist, and it is the premise to why I am who I am, and why I am sitting here on this televised program with you today. It is why I have gone through the entire route that I have been on, so that God would have me to sit before you at this very moment. With that awareness of truth, I'm going to hone in on what I have planned for this show. As I stated, this is the continuation of the Spiritual Confinement series, which would be the area of penetration 3, thus being show 3, as it pertains to the confinement series. Soul thirsting, and what it means to be spiritually thirsting from the soul. I am going to be reading from my book, my latest literary work, which is Soon I Wither, Weeping in the Grass of Old, to aid in today's lesson. And I am also going to be reading from scriptures from the King James Version Bible. And I am going to give a spiritual definition of the spirit sifting that is housed in this area of penetration. But I would like to say, before I get into all of that, that why we are doing the work that we're doing and why we are able to live the lives that we are living and experience the pain that we are suffering through and the heartache and the turmoil that we are continuously facing is because we are in the processing of transcending self. And we are in the process of getting out of doubting the conviction of who we are. And my dear friends, while we are in the processing of transcending self, which would be the coming out of the vanity of all that we are in the submittal to the love of God. I hear a lot of people talk about, the experience of wanting and needing to find exact data and a scientific approach to the makeup of who we are. But the mere fact that we're searching for that is the mere improbability of finding it. Truth only lies in the consciousness of God. And where is the consciousness of God? It is in the love of God, which rests in the heart that He has. And where is God's heart? It is in the very existence of God, therefore being the creation of all that is. And there are a lot of people talking about getting down to a retreat of such, or of some sort, away from their life and away from dealing with what we are dealing with. But there is no retreat. There is an entreaty to what we have been called to hear. And therefore we are required to hear what God is trying to speak to us. And so with that being said, we have to understand that there is nothing on this earth realm, or the measurements thereof, that can account to the love of God. All that we're doing, even in the pursuits of loving our own selves back to life, we have to understand that without the assurance of the love of God, we have nothing to hold on to. We have nothing to hope toward. And I myself am guilty of coming short of the receptivity of God's love. And we have to understand first that without God's love, we are incapable of loving ourselves. And if we are incapable of loving ourselves, how therefore can we love anyone else, or therefore receive the love of anyone else? And so that's where I wanted to touch base on the fact that everything that we're doing as it pertains to healing ourselves, we are in the processing of transcending self, which is the submittal of leaving the vanity of everything that we are. Which is the very premise to adhering to our spiritual lives. Because everything that's happening in this earth realm is going to bear us absolutely no fruit whatsoever. So, we have to begin to stop doubting the conviction of who we are and where we're going in the spirit. And so, as we are in the process of relinquishing one of the spirits of ego, because I am a firm believer that our ego contains several spirits. And there has been a spirit that has been presented to us in the form of the mazes of our vanity. Because a lot of people believe that vanity is the security of self and the demonstrator of whether or not we're right or wrong about ourselves and about anything else. But we have to understand that that is a spirit of our ego. And what is our ego? It is a representative of our vanity. And there are several spirits that are trying to operate in us while they are pursuing the pursuit of Satan, for our own submittal and to the propositioning of our truths. So as we are understanding that we are in the experience of fighting regions and territories of the affairs of Satan, we have to understand that everything that's happening is much deeper than what the eyes can see, and much deeper than what's at the surface of who we are. And while I have been in prophetic encounters of truth with God, even before the taping of this show, I present to you that awareness that we have to get out of the experience of dishonoring and disrespecting ourselves. We often wonder why we are experiencing being dehumanized by the hands of others. And we begin to wonder why we're going through all of these issues. But have you begin to search your heart for the truth? And have you begin to search your soul? And have you began to sift the cells of your brain, which would be the areas of your psyche that have not been tended to? Because if you're going to be prepared to fight the regions of the enemy, you're going to have to be prepared to dig deeper. And my dear friends, that is why I sit before you today to talk about the spirit of soul thirsting And I want to go ahead and get into the lesson that I have prepared tonight for this show. But before I want to do that, I want to talk to you all about pseudo-based love, as it would equate to what we are now experiencing, which is complete emptiness. Number one, without the love of God, we are, whatever season you're in, that you've allowed yourself to dismember your person by the rejection of God's love. You are running dry. It's like operating a vehicle with no gas. And you are operating in emptiness. Because pseudo-based love is not a truth. It is an unclear direction into a pathway that you are never going to see your way out of. And that's why I always talk about what I have deemed mazes as it relates to the spirit and getting through the operation of the spirit and their realms. We have to understand that anytime that we're operating outside of the love of God, and this is very serious, we are running on the spirit of emptiness. And what is emptiness? What is emptiness? Emptiness is a state of containing absolutely nothing. And we keep asking ourselves why we're not whole and why we're not full. And why we can't find the love that we want. Whether it be romantic, platonic, the love of your own self, whatever the case. We keep questioning why we can't rest at night. And why it is that we go to work and we work jobs and we pay our bills. Even if we can't pay them on time, still we're footing the bill. And we have friends, and we have associates, and we have affairs, and we have purposes, and we have passions, and we have visions, and we have dreams. And we're still unfulfilled. We're married. We're in relationships. We're dating. We have children. We have pets. We walk them out. We walk the pets out. We tend to the affairs of our hearts. And we keep wondering why it is that when I turn the key and go into my home at night, and I lie down on that bed, and I look at the surface of the wall staring back at me, and I still find myself empty. And this is powerful right now for anybody out there that's still hurting. And we begin to ask our spirits, who am I? And why am I here? And why do I still feel like I can't make it through this next hour? And that's because there is a rejection coming from the heart of the earth realm and the existence of Lucifer in you. And there is a separation from God. And this is serious. There is a separation from the love of God dwelling in you. And there is a submittal to the earth realm existence, which would be the world, and not the existence of the heavenlies, which will be the submittal to the love of God. And so we keep asking ourselves, why? And it's because we're empty. We are literally running on emptiness. And this is serious right now because, as I stated, emptiness is the state of containing nothing. So even if you're lying to yourself, which would be the premise of Satan, because he is the father of lies, made manifest in you as a host. You are containing nothing. And for a layman terms perspective, it's just like looking at a container sitting on your kitchen counter. And although you see it as being empty, you're choosing to believe that it's full of food that's been prepared. And so all the while you're telling yourself that you're this and you're that, and that you have been made whole by the works that you have performed in pursuit of your own willpower. And you're telling yourself that you're whole and you're full. But yet when you turn the key to your door, or you get in the shower and get ready for work in the morning, or you sit on your sofa after a hard day's work, and nobody's there to comfort you. I'm talking about those hours. When you sit upon the rock of your countenance and you have found yourself guilty of the denouncing of God's love, and you begin to question yourself about your purpose and about the meaning of your life, and you find no love in the hearts of others, and you find no truth and the merit that has gotten you nowhere, living on the disillusionment of self and the distortion of the pursuit of other people for your life, housed in the affairs of Lucifer, refusing to rise above where you have been, not receiving the fact that God has gotten you to where you are now, and the mere fact that you're taking a breath is on the allotment of God's truth. And by the mercy of his love for you. And you sit there in the candor of your own display. And at the submittal of the turmoil of your own heart. And dwindle in emptiness. But I've come to you today to give you assurance that there is peace and there is hope on the other side of the submittal to that emptiness that lies in your soul. I hear a lot of thought leaders talk about the experience of having a cup full and then the visual of that cup overflowing. And in fact, a great thought leader, credit being to Iyanla Vanzant, stated one time that the experience of there is the whole notion of the overflowing cup. And what's in the cup is the fullness of who you are. And then what's overflowing from the cup is what you have to give others. But I have an analogy on that. Because what we have to understand in the lesson of the love of God is that although you may be filling a cup, that same water has to be nourished. And that same water that you're filling that cup with has to be filtered. That water has to be filtered and it has to be nourished. And how is it that you believe that the rivers and the seas that flow are continuing to recirculate? And it is through the filtering and the nourishment of God alone. So we can't just begin the process of filling a cup and then it overflowing, because without God nourishing us and keeping us steadfast in who we are in Him, it's impossible to fill that cup and keep it full, first of all, and then it overflow without the divine encounter of God being living in us. And that is the love of God. And so with that analogy, I want to move on to, as we understand that we are empty without God's love. And therefore, we have the experience of what I talked about on the last show, the yearning and the desiring of our own heart, which is the earth realm heart. We would have to understand that we would have to be willing to transcend self. So that means we are in the processing. Let me get a working definition for you on that. And what it means to be in the transcendence of self. So if we are in the transcendence of self, we are in the process or in the act of what have you, of rising above something. And transcending, as it relates to rising above something, means that we are moving and shifting our consciousness to a superior state. And what are we doing if we are rising to a superior state of consciousness? It means that we have therefore accepted the love of God wholly. And when we accept the love of God, we are relinquishing our willpower. And we are receiving the will of God, which would act as us being in the experience of pursuing that which is the allotment of God. So we are not just in pursuit, but we are actually pursuing, which means we are actually doing what God is requiring us to do. So as we are rising, we are becoming superior to a consciousness that is not of this earth realm. So if we are beginning to transcend ourselves out of self, we are therefore submitting to God that we are ready to relinquish the vanity of our own hearts, which is the war of Satan that has been waged. And so I want to get us that working knowledge as it pertains to where we are going in the spirit, we are getting into the area of the penetration, which is soul thirsting. And so God began to take me in the Word as I was studying about this. And it led me to sojourn and the sojourning of our hearts as it relates to the yearning and the desiring of the earth realm heart. And God spoke to me about the prophetic encounter of the yearning and desiring of our earth realm heart, which God did give us interest into as it relates to our experience living on the earth realm. And let me be very clear, it is not the heart of God. It is an allotment or a mercy of God that He would allow us to operate without Him, which is us being on the earth realm and obtaining or Him giving us the earth realm heart in order to operate here because of our vanity. Let me continue to state, And God spake to me about sojourning. And what is sojourning? It is a temporary stay somewhere. And while we are here on the earth realm, there is the sojourn of our hearts. And this is one of the areas or the dimensions of our hearts that God is working with us on. And we have to understand that there is a dimension of our hearts as it pertains to the sojourn, which is the temporary stay of everything that we are while we are operating in this earth realm, because we are temporarily here. And so God spake to me about the sojourn of our hearts and it being temporary, that we would allow ourselves to stay in the pain and to stay in the hurt, because we must understand that it is a requirement of God that we suffer for the sacrifice of who we are into Him. And I want to talk about, I'm 36 minutes in. I want to talk about, now that I talked about the sojourning of our hearts, which is the dimension of our heart that we are in when we are in this area of penetration of soul thirsting, because we are in the experience of yearning and desiring, which is the prerequisite to the thirsting of our souls. And what does it mean? Number one, what is a soul? Let me first state that our souls are the immortality of us. So what is soul? Let me get a working definition for that. What is our soul? And our soul is the spiritual or immaterial part of a human being, which is who we are. And it is regarded as immortal. It is the emotional or intellectual energy or intensity of everything that we are, as it is revealed, in a work or any performance of a work. And then did you not just hear that? It is an emotional or intellectual energy or intensity as it is revealed in a work or the performance of a work. Therefore, it is God working in us. And it is the pursuing of the pursuit of all that we do. So now that we understand that, what does it mean to thirst? It is a feeling or a needing or a wanting for something. So we are feeling deeply and intensely within our souls that we are needing and wanting something. And a lot of people are believing that needing and wanting are separate or different. But the experience of thirsting for anything is the experience of needing and wanting for something desperately. And we're not talking about the physical experience of drinking something. We're talking about spiritually needing and wanting after something. And what are we doing when we are needing and wanting after something? We are therefore experiencing spiritual fragility, which is the quality of being easily broken or damaged. And we wonder why we are broken. And we wonder why we are in the face of despair and we are a damaged people. because we are continuously going to be running on emptiness and living in a dry land and thirsting from our soul, or from the space or the dimension of our soul, for the emptiness that we so choose to live in. So we are continuously living in dryness and living in emptiness if we are not allowing ourselves to fill ourselves up with the love of God and to overflow ourselves with the love of God. And so, as I am 36 minutes in, because there was a lot to give in this lesson tonight, I want to, if you can go with me to, I am reading from the King James Bible. If you can go with me to Ecclesiastes, I'm going to be reading from chapter 3, verses 11 through 20, to get validity for where I'm going in the spirit. And God said, once again, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 3 through 20. Or verse 11 through 20. Chapter 3, verses 11 through 20. And God said to every people, He hath made everything beautiful in His time. Also He hath set the world in their heart. So He has made us beautiful in our time that He's given us here. And He has set the world in our hearts, which is the earth realm heart. I just want to explain that to you. So God is telling us that we do not have the heart of God unless we seek it. And we are operating in the experience of the earth realm heart experience. And I'm not going to break down everything. I just want to speak to those two areas as it relates to this teaching today. That He hath made everything beautiful in its time. And not just us, every insect, every foul thing, every bird of the air, every cloud that moves, every star that operates in the heavens, every grass that blooms, every flower that blooms, everything that exists. So let me state that again. He hath made everything beautiful in His time. Also He hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. I also know that whosoever God doth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it. Let me restate that. I know that whatsoever God doeth, this is verse 14. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it. And God doeth it, that men should fear before Him. That which hath been now, and that which is to be, hath already been. And God requireth that which is past. And moreover, I saw under the sun the placement of judgment, that wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. I said in mine heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked. For there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. I said in mine heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them. As the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above a beast. For all is vanity. All go unto one place. All are of the dust, and all turn to the dust again. So that is the premise of what God has spoken over our lives. All is vanity. And from whence we came, from whence the dust we will go. And that is why I'm going to be speaking from my book tonight, or this morning, as it relates to the faces of the deep and the return to the dust, and the experience of weeping in the grass of old, from the dust of whence we came. And that's why I wanted to talk first from Ecclesiastes, to give validity to where I'm going in the spirit, and as it relates to the soul thirsting. Give me 1 second here where I'll review my notes. I am currently 47 minutes in. I lost my page. One second here. Okay. Definitely apologize about that. I had to review my notes. But I want to speak authority to where I'm going with this. And the first I want to talk about why God took me to sojourning, and why it is the premise of why we are thirsting in our souls. Because we are in a temporary stay as it relates to everything that we do in the earth realm experience. And we are in a temporary journey as it pertains to the journeys of God and the allotment of Satan to proposition our truths before the throne in the pursuit of our downfall. And we are the sojourners of our stay here. And we are in the sojourning dimension of our heart. And we are temporarily experiencing the call to the thirst. Let me press this. Of our soul. And the repositioning of that thirst. And putting it in the thirst of the love of God. And so I want to go, as I gave us the beginning, as it relates to the premise of this teaching today in Ecclesiastes. I want to take us now to Genesis 23 as it relates to the sojourning dimension of our hearts, as we're journeying through the soul thirsting of God. I'm going to take us to Genesis 23 and read 23 verse 1 through 4. I'm not going to take too much of your time. It's verse 1 through 4 Genesis 23. And this is a time when it was the death of Sarah, who was the wife of Abraham. And although it is relating to the death of Sarah and the burial of Sarah, God showed me in this scripture, as it pertains to the thirsting of our souls, which will be the submittal to God's love, and the requirement of us submitting to it. God prophetically took me to this scripture because it was a prophetic encounter of us burying everything that is dead within us. And so I'm going to read this scripture. Chapter 23, verse 1 through 4. And once again, this was the experience of the death of Sarah, which was the wife of Abraham. And Sarah was 107 and 20 years old. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kirjath Arba. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham stood up from before his dead and spake unto the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner with you. Give me a possession of a burying place with you, that I may bury the dead of my sight. And God prophetically spake to me that He is requiring us to mourn and to suffer and to die and once we do that, that we would bury that which is dead within us and to present ourselves as a sacrifice unto the debt of all that was once before, which is the requirement of our past. Because as God stated in Scripture, that He is requiring our past. And therefore, once God told us prophetically in this Scripture, once again, chapter 23, verse 1 through 4, that He is requiring us to journey to a place within ourselves, within. And remember, as I said, although this was the experience of the death of Sarah, the wife of Abraham, this is also the experience that is prophetic in the encounter that God showed me in the spirit realm. That He is requiring us to journey within ourselves, to sojourn our spirit, to sojourn within our spirits, so that we can meet ourselves in the death of us, and so that we can present ourselves as a sacrifice by the death of all that is unholy within us. And He would then therefore allow us to speak on the behalf of all that we are in the face of God. And we would come before Him as a stranger and as a sojourner with our own death. And this is prophetic in our hour. We would come with the death of us as a sacrifice before the throne in the face of God. And we would say unto God, to give me possession of the burying place of myself in you, that I may bury the dead out of my sight. And what would we do when we would bury the dead out of our sight? We would enter into the submittal of the love of God. Whew. And He would bury that which is dead within us, which is the emptiness of the heart of this earth realm. And God told us, he told us in Ecclesiastes that he made everything beautiful in its time. And he gave us the world in our heart. And so he would require us to present the depth of all that we are in this world before him, in order to obtain the heart of God. And so, with that prophetic awareness, that God would bury everything, every dead thing. And this is prophetic to anybody out there that is spiritually dying. And it's in the experience of a spiritual death. That God would have you to bury every dead thing, which would cause us to submit to the heart of God and to begin to sow the thirsting of our souls into the love of God. And what are we doing when we are in the journey of sojourning through the dimension of our heart? In the sojourning dimension of our heart. What are we doing? We have now become the sojourner of pain buried. We have become the sojourner of pain that has been buried. And we are rising up out of that pain. Because that pain has now become a dead thing. And you are carrying around dead weight. And that's why we are empty. Because we continue to choose the affairs of Satan, which is the belief system and or the doctrine of Satan, for the demise of your life. And we are dead. We are literally walking around in the form of a spiritual corpse. And I really need you to hear this in this hour. And we have become the sojourner of the pain buried. But God would have it that you would present the death of you before the throne of God for the submittal of the sacrifice of you to him. And he would have it that he would prophetically bury that which is dead within you for good. And I have two more things on this lesson. I'm going to give you the spiritual definition of soul thirsting. And then I'm going to read pages 114 through 116 of my book. And then I'm going to complete this lesson for tonight. And I have spiritually turned and intellectually termed, given a term to soul thirsting. And I have termed that the act of spiritual polydipsia. And what is spiritual polydipsia? It is excessive thirst or excess drinking. And what are we doing when we are in excess? We are in desperate need because we are running on empty. And we are so dry that we literally have nothing to hold on to. Thus being spiritual abnormalities caused by solistic schizophrenia. So we are literally housed in the schizophrenia or the schizophrenic experience of our soul. And what is that? It is the brain of our souls. It is the consciousness of our souls Therefore, the temporary loss, misdirecting, or wrongful use of one's intellect, emotional state, and intensity of their original spiritual intent. So it is the very destruction of the intent of the experience of your soul and the intellect or mind and or consciousness of your soul, which is completely separate from your mind and your consciousness. So I need you to get that, which is why I had to speak about everything I spoke to before I'm giving you the spiritual definition or the intellectual definition that I have termed for this lesson. So let me repeat that. Is the spiritual polydipsia, excessive thirst or excess drinking. So we are dry and we are thus living in the experience of being spiritually abnormal. So it is spiritual abnormalities caused by holistic schizophrenia. So you're literally in a state of schizophrenia coming from your soul. And what is it? As I spoke to, the sojourning dimension of your heart, which is the temporary loss, misdirecting, or wrongful use of one's intellect, emotional state, and intensity of the original spiritual intent of your soul. My God. And so I am at 1 hour and 1 minute, 58 seconds. And I just want to read from Soon I Wither, Weeping from the Grass of Old, pages 114 through 116, to back up that definition. And I want to give an account to what we're going through. And this is from page 114 through 116 of Soon I Wither. What becomes of a broken and wounded soul? Singing and playing about the halls of a heart that's dying. I was certain that the man I loved would keep me safe from harm. I was certain that he wouldn't forget what he saw when he looked upon my face into the eyes of what could be. I broke myself into nothing and shattered my life into pieces. I have spent years in the feeble hours of waiting, wanting, and never being found. I sold my soul to love. Love made tangible. I can almost hear the tears of my heart lying on the ground where he left me, buried alive in the dismay of mine own character. You see, I had no right to disown myself, to disrespect my integrity, to marry my own pain, and then auction it off to the lowest bidder. My soul weeps for me in the days of which I cannot withstand. The encounters of my very own truth. It was in peace that he hated me, and in noise that he shunned me. He disowned me when I poured my will over into his beautiful eyes. He saw the pain, and he saw the sadness. He saw the desperation, and he accepted the price of a love made tangible. I begged him for a betwixt love, and I pleaded with our insanity for the opportunity to heal what was never found. It was in the eyes of mine own demise that seemingly made it all worthwhile. Supreme in my worthlessness, I suffered in the pits and the pity of the pride and prejudice of glad depression for the prize of love made whole, love made new. But I was always too late to a schedule given to someone else. I gave it a go in the world of priceless courage in the days of years gone by. Each year I scorned. Each year I mourned my death from despair. I pushed the boat of my tears across the tides of my heart's journey. And somehow, somewhere, in time, I found the land of the living. And I'm going to leave you all with that tonight. Because there's real suffering and there's a real price to pay when you've made the decision that you don't love yourself. And you've made the decision that to disrespect and dishonor yourself. And you have made yourself a victim. Not only to the distortion and the ill perceptions that you have of your own self, but you've therefore given power over to the forces of the enemy. To give yourself permission to destroy your own life. And I come to you with the ending of this lesson today to ask you to search your soul and to search your heart. And someday there will be an opportunity for you to meet the acceptance of the heart God's trying to give you. And there will be a time when you will be presented with the opportunity to sacrifice the vanity of your own heart, which is the world heart and all the earth realm experience and the earth realm heart that God unfortunately had to drop us down here with. And the brokenness and the fragility of everything that we are as it relates to the earth realm experience. And there will be a submittal of that vanity. Because the truth is that we jeopardize everything that God has for us with every breath that we take that is not aligned in the inhale and the exhale of the existence of God. And when we do that, we are in refute. Let me press this again because the battery's going low. We are in the refute of the wholeness that we're trying to obtain. And so when you close that door tonight, or wherever you are, sitting in your car or in the bookstore, and dealing with loneliness and dealing with the violation of your own heart by the self-distortion and the destruction of your own psyche and your own consciousness. You sit there and you begin to ask yourself, do you want a real truth? And do you want a real opportunity to hear your heartbeat again? Because, my dear friends, it's time. Because as I told you on the last show, I gave my heart away again and displaced it. And found myself running on the fumes of gas that is not even in my engine, for a layman's terms perspective. And what did I find myself? Alone, turning the key to a door to a house that's empty. Looking at the walls of a distorted past and choosing to distort my own future. Because I'm operating in the lies of now. And this is what we do to ourselves. But someday, we have to accept the fact that it's not about the birth of us, but it's about the death of us. And whatever it is that you're holding on to, and you're yearning for and desiring for, that's coming from a place that is not at the submittal of the love of God, that's exactly where Satan is holding you. And you are basically in love captivity. And you are being imprisoned by the distortion of your own heart. And I really need you to hear this today. And it's the vanity that we continue to dwell in and operate in that's holding us hostage to the pain that God is trying to bury within us. And God said in his scripture that it is not about the birth. It is better for a man to see that it is not the birth of us that we need to be concerned with. It's the death. And we have to get about the business of understanding that we are required to find ourselves again, because we lost ourselves somewhere. But it's never too late to pick up the pieces. And it's never too late to exercise your willpower. In God. And so, I'm going to leave you guys with that tonight because I went over on time. I'm at an hour and 12 minutes, 24 seconds. But I'm telling you, there will be the time of timely. And there will be a time when you have to present yourself as a sacrifice to God. If you are expecting to heal. And if you don't, you're going to forever walk around carrying the corpse of your own life. And carrying a womb that is housing a dead fetus. Because whatever it is that you're trying to conceptualize and conceive, it's never going to happen unless you decide that you are going to submit to the will of God for your life. We're always going to end up too late and too short. Because if we don't have the love of God, we are incapable of loving ourselves. Incapable. And if we are incapable of loving ourselves, we are in love captivity. And I want to ask you tonight, or this morning, to give yourself a chance to being found, to dig deeper, to find yourself. And I'm going to go ahead and get off because I'm over on time. It's probably 3 or 4. But I'm going to leave you with that tonight. In the beauty of it's been the Burning Power Show. Dr. Sonny Alonzo Dotson. Where you're required to love yourself. God bless you. Righteousness.
Your Majesty. Oh, Your Majesty. Thank you for this service.